Welcome back to the $2 Film Club, and today we are talking about 2004's Troy, as Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is coming to theaters in a couple of weeks. We are a little early, I would say, talking about or getting in prep for The Odyssey, but due to Warner Brothers shifting around the release date of Evil Dead Burn, we kind of had to adjust our schedule a little bit. This is a big ensemble historical epic in the vein of like Gladiator from 2000, which, funnily enough, director Wolfgang Petersen apparently rejected, and that's part of the reason why he made this movie. But if you're unfamiliar with that name, you'd probably recognize some of his work. He's probably best known for directing The Never-Ending Story.
Oh, he did Air Force One. I didn't know that. He did The Perfect Storm.
Okay, so there's some Line of Fire too.
Yeah, there's like a few other things that I didn't I didn't realize he did Perfect Storm and Air Force One, which I think are pretty good movies. Outbreak as well. That's a pretty solid 90s film.
He's had some varied work, let's say. But anyways, the film is also written by David Benioff of Game of Thrones fame. So if anyone, hates or loves that show, this is an interesting one.
What seasons though?
David,
he
was one of the showrunners of the entire show.
Okay.
D&D.
Okay,
who
so
was the other guy?
This, I don't know, but this movie makes a lot more sense now. I'll say that.
Calm down. Anyways, but yeah, obviously it's loosely inspired by the Homeric poem, the Iliad, and there's some other stuff in it as well, because the Iliad is really like a short part of the Trojan War. But of course, this movie was subject to a lot of criticism from classicists and historians regarding its faithfulness to the source material and regarding historical accuracy. And that's mainly due to because Petersen and Benioff both have, talked about this in interviews, about how they really didn't want to include a lot of the mythological stuff, like the gods and the more fantasy elements and whatnot. But it was still a box office success, even though, it got mixed reviews from critics at the time of its release in 2004. And this also resulted in Petersen returning for, I think they spent $1 million on Warner Brothers, the distribution company. They spent $1 million for him to re-edit the movie for the 2007 director's cut, which is the version of the movie that we saw, or that we watched for this. Obviously, Ryan, this is his first time watching the movie in any shape or form. I've seen this movie several times at this point in both versions. What are you laughing about? What of what I said was really funny too? Because a lot of it is kind of funny. I'm just curious.
No, the thing that really caught me off guard was them asking him to come back to totally re-edit it.
They didn't ask him. He asked them if he could come.
Oh, he asked them.
He didn't like the theatrical version, along with a lot of people. And
that makes a lot more sense. Not like that he wanted to redo it, but dude, the editing in this movie is so choppy, bro.
Okay, it's not that bad.
Dude, the fight scenes are so uninteresting in this movie.
I mean, there's a lot of cuts, and some of it definitely could have been shot better, but it's really not that bad. It's less choppy than Gladiator, and I would say that's a better movie.
I'll say this, maybe if they hired a better choreographer to choreograph the fights, it would have helped, because I think I sent this to you last night when I watched the first half.
Oh, the patriarchal stuff? Yeah.
Dude, it's just the fighting in every single one-on-one fight, not the big battles, just seem to be super slow and unenergetic, and it feels like that Petersen kind of forced a lot of quick cuts in all the fight scenes to try and get some ounce of adrenaline in this movie, because I think for me that's what I found lacking the most, is a lot of adrenaline and me caring about what was going to happen in these fights, particularly the one between Achilles and Hector.
So you don't like that fight? Because I think that's one of the better ones.
I don't disagree. It's one of the better ones, but I'm not saying it's great at the same time. You know what I mean? Dude, for me,
that's interesting. I know a lot of people who, or not know a lot, but I've seen a lot of people talk about how that's one of their favorite moments from the film. I've seen people discussing it as one of the like best duels in like a movie.
See, like, I don't get that. I should also watch. I feel like a lot of people are talking about it when it comes to the theatrical, because I don't know what the differences are, just in like the whole film as a whole.
We're gonna get into the theatrical versus the director's cut. I will say though, it's edited the same way. Like, you can definitely tell that they took more time to edit the movie in the director's cut, but it's the same editing style. You know, most of the fight scenes are intact. So you know, the Hector duel hasn't been changed from an editing standpoint for what I could tell. But there is an interesting part about like that they did change in between the two cuts that we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean, if I think the reason why I wanted to talk about the director's cut is, one, it's the preferred version of both the director and, you know, a lot of fans of the movie who have seen both versions. Critics even came back and said, like, yeah, this is definitely an improvement. Not that it was great, but it's an improvement on the theatrical version. Mainly, the thing that I get more out of it is like there's more story. The theatrical version was mainly, first of all, they didn't have a lot of time to get it out into theaters. So there were a lot of production delays, and it was kind of like rushed in post-production to get the edit done, get all of post-production done, and get it released by the time that Warner Brothers or whoever wanted it to be released. So there's a lot of like conversations in the theatrical cut that are cut up, essentially. Like, they take out a lot of like individual lines just like get through the scene faster, and overall I find the pace to be a little bit too quick. That being said, you might find the director's cut of Troy to be maybe a tad bit too slow. So,
well, I didn't like struggle with that, but like, for example, I'm going back to the fight scenes. It just feels like a lot of stuff feels oddly placed. Like, in particular with the Achilles and Hector fight scene, I didn't find myself having any emotional buildup during it, but then after Hector had already died, or I think this was right as Achilles like stabs him through the heart, that's when like the really dramatic music comes in, as you see his father just dramatically like fall like he's in a stage play, like he just had a heart attack. And it's like those type of moments is, I said this to you before, I found this film way more unnecessarily funny than I think it intended it to be. And those are like the type of editing points that I'm talking about when I say that comment in particular, because it just feels overly dramatic for a film that doesn't feel like it's trying to be that dramatic.
no, yeah, I agree with that. You can definitely tell that it's a little bit unintentional because the movie is treating itself a little too seriously. And I think that's more of just a product of the era. But again, at the same time, it's based on a Greek tragedy, and it's supposed to be operatic, and, you know, it's melodramatic. Like, the things that they're doing are melodramatic. Like, I know that it plays out a little differently in the movie than it does in the original Greek myth, but there's a lot of weird shit in the Greek myth, and so that kind of stuff it doesn't bug me because I can get past it. Like, I know that it's just inherent to the story that they're trying to tell, even though they weren't intending for it to be that way. But I can understand, coming from someone who isn't familiar with the Greek myth, for it to feel odd.
Well, kind of like to piggyback off what you were saying, the thing that I think I would be more akin to that style of what the film I think is going for if the film felt more tragic. Because by the time you get to the end, and dude, see, this is another thing that like unintentionally made me laugh. Like, the fact that Paris, when he shoots the first arrow, goes through Achilles' Achilles, like, bro, that's like shit you can't make up.
Well, that's how it happens in the myth, though.
That's fine.
That's where the name Achilles tendon comes from.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Oh my
No,
god.
I swear to God, bro.
Okay, well, why
That's
did
my
you think
thing.
his name was Achilles?
I thought they just thought it sounded cool, bro. Like, I'm
No.
genuinely serious.
No, no, no,
Like,
no, 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 no.
that in the movie made me laugh because it felt like something being overly dramatized because it's Brad Pitt and he has to look like really hot and sweaty and gross when he stands back up and walks and then gets shot another like 5 times.
No, so
And I'm
okay,
like, dude,
I
I literally
guess
sat there and I'm like, of course he gets shot in the fucking Achilles.
okay, I guess I underestimated how little you knew about
Dude,
the
I know
Greek myth.
absolutely nothing when it comes to
So,
like Greek mythology
but like
and
you know
shit
about
like
the
that.
Trojan horse and stuff, right? Like,
Just by name.
okay,
I'm a virgin
I'm
to this stuff, bro.
I'm so baffled by this because maybe I should have walked you and the viewer through some of this. Okay, so like I said, like I told you before we jumped on here, I think the movie follows the general story beats of the poem. And even though we get to the same place by different means, the places are still the same. So Helen is abducted by Paris, even though the circumstances surrounding that are different in the poem. She gets abducted. Menelaus goes and complains to his brother. They all agree, him and his brother and all of the surrounding Greek nations agree to go and get her. And they sail to Troy. There's a 10-year war. Did you know? You know it lasted 10 years, right?
I knew it was supposed to last like a long time. I didn't know
Okay.
10 years in particular, but
No, yeah.
I knew it was
So
a multi-year war.
yeah, it was in the Greek myth and in the Iliad. It takes place over the course of 10 years. Obviously, that's been condensed in the movie, but that's why they keep making jokes about it.
That's
Where
what
they
I
refer
figured
to like
because
the
they
10-year
mentioned
thing.
it way too often
Yes.
for me to
Yes.
not laugh at that too. Like,
Yes.
guys, I get it. You can keep mentioning it takes 10 years trying to break through the wall like another dozen times and I'll still get it.
And so, like I said before, the Iliad is a small portion of the war. It's during the last year of the war, and it starts the essentially the Iliad is simply about the rage of Achilles, and so the wrath that incurs from him when Agamemnon essentially insults him by stealing one of the slave girls that he had claimed as the spoils of war. And so he refuses to fight, much like what happens in the movie. And, some disaster follows because the Greeks they're not progressing as much as they want to in trying to defeat Troy. And
So what I'm hearing
eventually,
is all the Patroclus stuff is kind of bullshit.
no, the Patroclus. No,
Okay.
we're getting to that.
Okay. I
So
was like-
Patroclus, no. So Patroclus is there in the poem. He's not his cousin, but historically, in other sources, they are cousins. And that was another thing that that a lot of people considered wrong with the movie was that they didn't portray Patroclus and Achilles as like lovers. But canonically, they are cousins. It's just in the poem they're not referred to that way. So
let me interject here,
Yeah.
just because I think what that part of their relationship is part of like when I was explaining to you, a lot of the relationships in this movie don't work for me.
Yes.
And it's their relationship between
Patroclus.
Patroclus and Achilles, because for me it feels like it feels like they're trying to do like a little brother big brother relationship in the movie, but it doesn't come off like that, and then they don't have too many scenes in between that and then when Patroclus pretends to be him and then dies. And then that's what sets off Achilles to want to go and kill Hector. And like for me, that was like one of the bigger issues because I didn't understand their relationship going into it. And yet another moment where I laughed, like, damn, everyone just thought this guy was Achilles. Like, I get he had the armor and he looked like him.
I mean, so
but it's like,
that stuff is in the poem. So
okay.
it is. I think the problem is that even though they do set up the idea of them being, close familial relationship, it's few and far between because we're dealing with all of the other overarching stuff.
Yeah.
And so it can kind of come off as like, do I really care? I think it's enough for me to care, but I understand what you're saying in that it's not as much of a focal point, so that when it does happen, you kind of feel like, that's,
Well,
someone
it just
died, I guess. But
felt really random to me in the moment.
yeah. In the poem, Paris does fight Menelaus, and it is with the intention of ending the war. And so they agree, like, we'll fight and whoever dies wins, and then we can all, go about our business. Because the war was pretty much solely fought to get her back, get Helen back. All of the stuff about Agamemnon wanting like power and whatnot, like, it's not really present in the poem, to my understanding. I haven't fully read through the poem. I'm mostly making a lot of these judgments based off of this book that I have, the Greek myths, which does go into a lot of detail on stuff that's written in the Iliad and stuff found from other sources that portray the Trojan War. Anyways, so there's a fight between them. It doesn't decide anything for a different reason, but it's essentially the same. Agamemnon is not winning, and eventually Hector does fight Patroclus, but they know that it's him eventually, even though he comes into the battle wearing Achilles' armor, and they eventually figure out that it's him. Hector fights him and kills him, so it's not unintentional, but he does kill him, and Achilles gets so upset about this that he goes and challenges him to a duel, and obviously Achilles wins, and then he refuses to let the Trojans take the body and do the funeral rites, and he does drag his body around the walls of Troy, and literally the end of the story is the scene between Priam and Achilles in his tent, where Priam is begging him to return the body and let them do the funeral rites. And the story ends with Achilles agreeing. And essentially, that's where I say that it's about the rage of Achilles, because it's wrapped up in that. The story of the Iliad is wrapped up in him letting go of his rage.
Yeah, so they literally just added the extra 50 minutes because of a Hollywood blockbuster.
Well, I mean, they're trying to tell the overall story of the Trojan War. So the stuff with the Trojan horse does happen. It's not referenced to in any of the Homeric poems, but there are other sources that depict the idea of Odysseus coming up with stowing away on the Trojan horse, leaving it as a gift for the gods, pretending as if they sailed away, and then when the Trojans bring it into the city, they come out, open the gates, and allow the Greek army to come in and sack the city. Helen is restored to to her husband. So Menelaus doesn't die, Agamemnon doesn't die, and so Helen is returned to the Greeks, and they destroy the city. All of that is generally kind of accurate. They do sack the city and everything, and I'm pretty sure most of them die.
I'll say this, knowing that now, is I do like the changes to the ending with the entire raid on Troy, but I think it all comes back to the character dynamic issues that I have when in the film Briseis kills Agamemnon. Dude, I'm gonna get killed with all these names.
They are kind of hard to pronounce.
Just because I understand why in the context of the film, it's right for her to stab him in the neck and kill him. But it goes back to you not seeing, as the audience, enough scenes between the two of them to truly understand her rage. Because to me, it just reads that he's a dirty guy that just wants to use her as a sex object that also allows her to get raped by a bunch of the men in the Greek army. And in the film, you never see that. They do the one rape scene. I'm not saying I want to see that.
I don't think she
but
gets.
You don't see,
it's not implied to me that she actually gets raped, but it is implied that the intention was for that.
No, yeah, because he orders that, and they say that in the film. But I think
More or less, yes.
I think for the sake of the argument for the end of the film, I thought it would have been stronger context watching him order the guys to do it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I could feel more fulfilled when it's her to kill him at the end.
Yeah. So yeah, I would agree with that. I do think there's not enough. There's enough for the audience in terms of like, we understand that Agamemnon is kind of a shitty guy. He's been doing all of these kind of villainous things, and obviously a lot of the stuff with Briseis is more concerned with the beef that he has with Achilles. And so I think in the moment it's good in terms of resolving some of that stuff, but Achilles isn't directly involved, so it kind of can fall short.
It works enough. Like, I'm not saying it's a end all be all for that.
It could have been better
scene, but yeah, no, I agree. It could have been better, and I think Rose Byrne gives one of the better performances in the movie.
Oh yeah.
Just because like it,
she helps with the idea of their romance, even though the writing isn't there.
Well, dude, it's crazy because I feel like Brad Pitt is giving a different performance in the first half of this movie compared to the second half of this movie. And I prefer the second half performance much more than the first half.
So, real quick before we dive deep into that, because I do want to talk about that.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned, I forgot to mention that Achilles dies before the sack of Troy, so he is not present during any of that.
Okay, I think that makes sense because I thought it felt weird for him to be there only looking for Briseis.
Yes. It is odd when you realize that he doesn't really have any more stake in the story because his beef with Hector is gone. He doesn't really care about the Trojan War anymore. Like, he's not doing anything for glory. And that was kind of his whole thing. And that's part of the thing where you kind of wish the romance between him and Briseis was written a little bit better, or more context was added to it, because he kind of does go out of his way just to rescue her, even though it is a little bit of a plot hole where he could have still just taken her and left.
Well, that's what that was like kind of my whole thing while thinking. I'm like, bro, you literally just gave her away like in the last scene, and now you're going in with Odysseus. You're going into the Trojan horse to go and raid this city that you've clarified multiple times that you don't give a fuck about the Greeks. Like,
yeah,
bro.
And so yeah, there's odd stuff like that, but obviously, like, from a Hollywood perspective, they're like, well, we have to have the main hero go into, and it is interesting watching it play out once he does find her, and having Paris be the one who kills him, which I'm trying to remember. I don't think he's the one who kills him in the story. Hold on. I didn't get that.
See, like, already. This goes back to like my confused feelings about this movie, because in context of what the movie set up, I think it works, but Paris as a character in the movie is just so not a character that it's hard for me to care about him killing him at the end. Simply because Paris, like, in the beginning is just kind of like the side person. He bitches out of the fight at the very beginning, and then he kind of disappears for like the middle of the movie, and then all of a sudden you just see him practicing with a bow and arrow, and then dude, I can't tell you how much I laughed when everyone just accepted Hector was dead before he even went to go fight Achilles. That dude is just serious. Like, I understand why.
It's because he's, they know that he's outmatched.
He's this great fighter and he's outmatched.
I will say, I know you're making fun of a lot of that stuff. I think it works. like it adds to the buildup and the tension when, because Hector is definitely one of the characters that you feel for the most.
I
And
agree.
I think part of that is definitely Eric Bana's performance. He's great in this.
Also agree.
Achilles, even though Brad Pitt is kind of half and half on whether or not he's going to be good in a given scene, I I think the main thing going for that fight scene is that you kind of don't want either of them to win, but you know that one of them does. And obviously the story dictates that Hector has to die. But I think it's helped by the fact that you know that even though Hector is a competent fighter and he's a competent leader, when you put him up against Achilles, the greatest... I get that it kind of doesn't make sense in the terms of the movie because, they stripped away all the mythical aspects. But they kind of try to make up with that by showing us that in a given fight Achilles is going to win, and that's what the tension is brought from, or part of the tension is brought from in the duel between them. That Hector is going to lose, and you kind of don't have a choice but to watch him die.
Well, see, I guess that was like one of my other things with the pacing of the movie and the way they characterize Achilles in the movie, because the film relatively opens up on Achilles being knocked out after sleeping with a few women, and they want him to be in a one-on-one fight with Boagrius. Jesus Christ, kill me now. And then all he does is just run up and just does like a little jab in the neck. And then from my knowledge, you don't really see him fight again until he fights Hector. And all between that...
I mean, you see him sack the Temple of Apollo.
Okay. But did he, really... okay, let me...
Yeah, bro, he was taking motherfuckers out.
Okay.
I agree with you in the fact that the movie struggles because it's trying to be this, epic, action-led movie, and it's dealing with trying to tell the story of the Iliad along with telling the story of the overall Trojan War. So things kind of get lost. I've seen the movie 10 times now, so I can remember these things a lot better than someone who's watching a 3-hour long movie for the first time. But those sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to go off your point to the fact that I think the biggest problem towards that is within the screenwriting, because they mention how good of a fighter he is just so goddamn often that for me, I kind of forget when he actually does have a fight that is something meaningful. Because going back to the Hector and Achilles fight, dude, Achilles doesn't look like he's struggling one bit, and then 40 minutes later, he's telling his father he's the best warrior I've ever fought in my life. Bro, it didn't seem like that.
Well,
you made a toy out of him, it looked like.
I mean, yes and no. Obviously, I said before, Hector is outmatched, but he definitely stands his ground, and it takes, at least in the context of the movie, the fight is longer than... some of the other ones that he's had. He's not taking them out with one blow. Yeah. So there's, in the sense of that, he is technically the strongest fighter that Achilles has fought, even though it does kind of seem like Achilles isn't struggling as much as Hector is during the battle. But I think that's intentional.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying in it being the intentional part. That's just one of the things for me that felt kind of weird, because you are overbearing a lot of information and characters by the point of this film that I won't lie, I did get a little lost, not by the end, but by the time that fight between the two of them does come through, because they have to get through so much that the book or the poem has, but also the stuff that they're clearly seemingly trying to add at the same time to make it work as a film. And I think you see that a lot, that the poem side and the additional added stuff that Hollywood has is kind of fighting each other, not to have an intentional joke, but they don't seem to mesh together as well as they were hoping.
I think the main problem is that obviously the David Benioff and Peterson are trying to do something different than what the actual Greek myth is telling. And, Greek myths in and of themselves are, especially trying to tackle the entire Trojan War. based on the stuff that I'm reading from this book, is that the a lot of the stuff that happens is very episodic. Like there will, there's a very sorry, Jesus Christ. There's a very clear like linear story, but it stops to like break down like, okay, now this character is doing this and then this character is doing that, but it all kind of eventually ties into the Trojan War. And there's stuff about like Paris stopping along the way on his sail back home with Helen and doing a bunch of fucked up shit. And then there's certain accounts that are like, well, the Greeks didn't exactly sailed all the way to Troy in one shot. Like some accounts say that like they got blown off by a storm or they sailed the wrong way. Like there's a lot of stuff like that in it, and so it's hard from a screenwriting perspective to condense that all into one narrative. There's a lot of characters with a lot of backstories, and obviously they're trying to get around that by removing a lot of like the mythological stuff. They make comments about Achilles being a demigod and being indestructible, which is all true in the Greek myth. He is indestructible except for the Achilles heel, the heel of his foot, and he is the son of a god or a nymph in some accounts, whichever. But so and I think that's a thing where they wouldn't have had to go through so much effort if they had just kept some of that stuff in. Like, if we know that Achilles is a demigod, then yeah, obviously he's gonna be the one who wins all of these fights because he's indestructible, he can't be killed, he's a really good fighter, and he's favored by the gods. They wouldn't have had to exposit so many times like, oh, he's the greatest fighter, like oh, the little boy asked him at the beginning, like, oh, people say that you're the son of a god or a goddess or whatever. And it kind of gets bogged down by trying to make up for a lot of the stuff that they took out of the original story, on top of trying to cover so much ground.
Yeah, you could feel that, especially with the amount of times they reference the gods in the movie. Like, it feels like they're trying to at least have some sense of the gods and their actual actions that have to do with the story, but they don't actually want to include them, which is like the kind of weird part.
I mean, the weird part is them not including it, but I think the problem with that is that the Greeks so inherently believed that the gods were real, and you see that in a lot of these old poems and old plays in where the Greek gods are heavily involved in the events. Like I mentioned earlier that Paris and Menelaus do fight, but in the poem, Aphrodite saves him. So that's the reason why nobody dies. Because Paris is going to lose, he's about to be killed, and Aphrodite literally comes down and sweeps him up and carries him away.
See, that's way better than him looking like a little bitch.
Yeah, and so it does. I mean, Paris is a little shit in the Greek myths too, but in the movie, because they're trying to make it more realistic, it comes off as way more cowardly and way more weaselly than I think they were intending, especially for someone who started the entire war and they're basing it, like, the foundation is their love story.
Well, bro, this goes back to like what I said at the beginning, that I feel like my issue with the relationship or the way that it's played between Helen and Paris is it doesn't feel like Helen really likes him or truly loves him. And then a lot of their stuff seems to go away until the very end. Yeah,
it stops focusing on their relationship halfway through, because then it actually starts to adapt the Iliad, which has nothing to do with, Helen is featured in it, and obviously Paris is, but it's not the focus of. The focus is the fact that Achilles is angry and he doesn't want to fight, and so things get fucked up until eventually he decides, like, oh, now I have a stake in this, I'm going to go kill Hector, and then that's the end. And so, I like the stuff that they set up between Paris and Helen, but again, it doesn't come back until like the very end. It feels like they're trying to push a lot of things aside, one after the other, to be like, okay, now we got to focus on this. And again, the Greek myths are like that. If you sat down and you retold the entirety of the Trojan War, it would be like that. But it's a little more jarring in like a film form.
Yeah, I think you can definitely feel that come through because it wasn't just them that I felt that way with. Like I was saying, I think Achilles as a character confuses me because the entire time he's essentially fighting for the Greeks, but is also talking about how much he hates them and doesn't abide by their king or their ruler. And so for me, like, I understand why he is there by the time he fights Hector.
Yeah.
But for a lot of the beginning of the movie, I'm like, why are you here then, bro? Do you just like the women and booze? And like, what is it that's keeping you here for someone who says they don't like being here?
I mean, it's not that he doesn't like being there. He doesn't like taking orders from Agamemnon. And again, I think it's better contextualized in the poem because they stripped all of that, Greek stuff out of it. They have to make up for it by adding that he doesn't like Agamemnon, and that might sound contradictory. But then at the same time, I understand that the reason why he's there is that he wants to be remembered, and he's achieving that by being here and fighting in the war, or when he chooses to.
I guess Brad Pitt took those directions a little too seriously in the beginning of the film. With the amount of times the dude just looks off into the void to try and look like really cool or like he's some momentous figure, dude. That was another thing that just like endlessly killed me in laughter. The dude would just be in a conversation and then just like the person's talking to him and he's just like looking really stoic into fucking nothing. And he's like, brother, what are you doing? Just have a conversation, please. You can look heroic and stoic and whatever it is, but just like stop looking into the water, bro.
I will say, I think Brad definitely shines when he's acting with someone and not, the other stuff.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that Brad Pitt did not want to be in this movie.
No, you can tell.
So
you can easily tell.
Obviously, I highlighted before that the film has a fuck ton of name actors, even at the time, but now, especially now, like Diane Kruger, this was like kind of one of her first movies, but obviously we've seen her in a lot of stuff. She wanted to do National Treasure, also starring Sean Bean. But she's been in a lot of stuff. She was in Inglourious Bastards, Tarantino movie, also starring Brad Pitt. Anyways, but a lot of people, or not a lot, but some of those names have since lamented kind of their time on the movie. One of them being Peter O'Toole. He famously did not get along with Peterson, the director. He called him a clown at a film festival. He said that, and among other things, like he didn't agree with the way that the movie was being made. But he also apparently walked out of the premiere 15 minutes into the movie, which I just think is really funny.
Bro, you know it's bad when you got one of your main actors fucking just dipping out.
I mean,
like,
to be fair, Peter O'Toole was in Supergirl, which is by far a worse movie, so...
Yeah, but we can accept that because it was so much behind this movie in terms of years.
I mean, he's also doing a lot better of an acting job in this movie, I will say, as Priam.
It's far better in this. Far better.
Obviously, Pitt has shared similar remarks, saying, I had to do Troy. I pulled out of another movie and then had to do something for the studio. So I was put in Troy. It wasn't painful, but I realized that the way the movie was being told was not how I wanted it to be. And then more recently in an interview with Variety, Orlando Bloom said he blanked out the entire film. According to him, he didn't want to portray Paris and said it was against everything he felt in his being.
Dude, that makes so much sense because Orlando Bloom just looks, dude, he looks miserable in this movie.
He does. He does look like he's struggling a lot, especially in like the romantic stuff. Like you can tell he's trying to put on like pretty boy charm, but I think the problem is that Helen is so mature for her age that it kind of doesn't work a lot of the times. I will say though, there are moments where I think he is doing a good job. I know we kind of made fun of the scene between him, like his fight between Menelaus, specifically at the end, like when he runs away. Like that's a big moment in the film, and I think that's the part where a lot of people really cemented in their minds, like I don't like this character. But I will say he's doing a better job acting wise in that scene where like the moment where you see in his eyes that he realizes, oh shit, I'm gonna die. I think that's good acting wise. Like he does a good job of portraying that, which is funny because in that same interview, he talks about that moment in the script where he like crawls away and like latches onto Hector's leg and he's just like super cowardly and whatnot. And that's the moment where he was like, I didn't want to play this role. But one of his agents at the time told him, like, but that's the moment that'll make it, and he believed what his agent said, and so he took the role. I just think that's really funny because I do think that's one of the better acting moments from his character.
I mean, I guess.
But yeah, it's weird. To be fair, not everyone is having a horrible time. Brian Cox, who played Agamemnon, this is pulled directly from the IMDb. In Vanity Fair's career retrospect, Brian Cox says that Agamemnon is the only role he has ever pursued. Cox also commented on working with co-star Brad Pitt. "Quote unquote, he'd never been in costumes like that. Brad walked on set and my jaw was down because he was so stunningly beautiful. I'm oh, wait, hold on. No, hold on. It gets funnier. I'm straight, but I thought, wow, my God, this guy is stunning." I will say Brad Pitt looks the part. Like, he did a lot to get into shape. He quit smoking, which he also lamented. But yeah, I mean, he looks good. He modeled his body off of like actual like Greek statues. So he looks good. But he struggles a bit. Like I told you when you started watching it, there's a 50% chance you're either going to love him or you're going to hate him in the movie.
Well, I think my love and hate is 50-50 because I hate the first half of what he's doing, but then I really like what he's doing towards the end, particularly when he's given like an actual emotional core to try and handle with.
Yes.
Because it's just so weird because you have the acting of Orlando Bloom, the first half from Brad Pitt, like Diana Kruger's really not all that great, but then you have like Brian Cox, Eric Bana, Brendan Gleeson, Sean Bean, and they're all doing a really phenomenal job in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think like that's what kind of threw me off while watching it. I wasn't expecting to see so many variety of acting choices, I'll say, throughout this movie because, like I said, like Eric, like I guess what you were saying before, Eric Bana is probably one of the best parts of this movie, and like I think when he does die, that's why you do care for the amount that you at least I did, is because you enjoyed him in the movie and you understand or understood his character's importance to Troy itself in a way that you don't get with Orlando Bloom when he eventually does become the prince or like the king after his dad dies, whichever way you want to look at it. But yeah, like you were saying, Sean Bean's really good. I wish more of him was in this if they decided to make more creative choices.
Dude, for years I have been so annoyed that we never got an Odyssey sequel with him starring as Odysseus.
Dude, he would have.
Don't get me wrong. I'm super excited for Nolan's Odyssey. Also, funnily enough, I forgot to mention this. So Peterson actually was developing this movie for Warner Brothers, but he left the production to work on their Batman v Superman movie. Eventually
the like original
one of their original attempts to get that movie off the ground. And once that movie fell through, he eventually came back. But in the meantime, Warner Brothers actually offered this movie to Christopher Nolan to direct, and he was attached to direct it. But once Peterson came back,
they kicked him off.
They gave him Batman Begins as a consolation prize.
I think I did hear about that.
We did get a good movie out of this. It was Batman Begins, but you know it's been a long time coming for Nolan's take on Greek myths. But that being said, like I said, yeah, I'm super excited for his take on the Odyssey. But
Sean Bean would have been interesting.
He's so good in the role. He's having a good time. He's one of the few actors who has been like, yeah, I loved working on that movie. It was great. Agamemnon, obviously, Brian Cox, all of them, and you can really tell that all of them
That's
understood the assignment. And then Brad Pitt and Garrett Hedlund are kind of like the odd ones out, which you can tell that they were just like, I don't understand this, and I don't want to. I either don't want to be here or
Greek sword. What do I do with this?
But yeah, there's yeah. There's,
I'll say this. I feel like I would like. I don't think I'm bashing this movie. I feel like there is something about it that I did enjoy,
it's
regardless.
spectacular.
Sure, spectacular is a word that someone
Spectacular,
would use.
and it's okay, hold on a second. It's when I say spectacular, I mean that like you always have a good sense of the scale of the war,
Yeah.
of the armies, of like what's happening. I think there are good dramatic moments in the movie. I think the idea of Helen leaving with Paris because her life is so shitty in Sparta makes sense in the context of the film. It might not make sense in the context of the original story. But that being said, there's good setup to things. It's just it kind of, fumbles a little bit halfway through once it starts, mixing all of it together. Which,
I just
don't
know I would
there's-
have hated the theatrical version. After
It's okay.
watching
So
this.
I did go back when you started watching the director's cut. I did throw in the theatrical version to just because I've never watched them back to back.
Yeah.
The first time I saw the movie, I watched it and I didn't realize I was watching the director's cut, and so I was just like, "Oh, this is cool. This is a 3-hour action movie. This will be great."
Yeah.
And I watched the movie and I was like, "Oh, I liked that. That was pretty good." And later, I think I inherited. Oh no, sorry. I found my aunt's copy of the movie, and so when I put that one on, every once in a while I'd be like, I feel like we skipped over something. Like the scene that introduces Odysseus is not in the theatrical version.
No
and
way. That's such a good scene.
It is a very good scene. But I remember sitting there watching and just being like, we skipped something. And it kept happening where like certain parts of the movie that I remember from my first time watching weren't in it. And I was like, okay, something's clearly wrong because I swear to God these were in here. It was a weird Mandela effect thing. And then I realized that there was a director's cut and I was like, oh, I must have watched the director's cut and not realized. So it is interesting. Something that I mentioned earlier when you brought up the music for the Hector fight. So one of the big things with this movie was the musical score. So the original person who was supposed to do the score, I'm trying to remember his name. Hold on a second. I know I have it somewhere here. Something Yared? Gabriel Yared? Was that what it was? Hold on.
Damn, I'm on IMDb right now and I can't find it.
Hold on. Yes, Gabriel Yared. Sorry. So
Okay.
Gabriel Yared was originally chosen by director Peterson to compose the score. During test screenings for the movie, though, people hated his score. They absolutely hated it. They were like, "This is way too old-fashioned for my modern action movie. That needs to go. Like, get that away from me." And so,
Fucking boomer.
with like 4 to 5 weeks before the movie's theatrical release, the studio fired him. Didn't even give him a chance to come back and redo some of it. They fired him and they hired James Horner, who big name in film composing. He's done Titanic. He did Braveheart, another historical epic.
I haven't seen that.
You've never seen Braveheart? Jesus Christ.
No.
Okay. Well, sorry. That's a
it's one of-
conversation for another time.
It's one of those films that I want to get to though one day.
He did Aliens.
Okay.
For James Cameron. Anyways, big music composer. So they hired him to essentially write and compose and conduct the entire score with 4 weeks to go before the theatrical release.
Sounds about right.
And so one of the big changes for the director's cut is the music.
Oh wait, so like the theatrical cut is a different soundtrack?
A little bit. So most of
Okay.
James Horner's stuff is still in the movie, in the director's
Interesting.
cut. However, he either took cues out and replaced them with some of the original rejected score, or he used temp music, and or he repeated cues from other points in the movie. I personally couldn't tell where things were being repeated. Again, haven't watched the theatrical cut back to back with the director's cut. However, the Hector fight is one where the music was replaced. So in the original theatrical version, it is James Horner's composition. But in the director's cut, it is temp music, and the
No,
music is from the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes. So it
dude,
is
that
a
makes
Danny
so much
Elfman
sense.
composition.
It felt so weird in the moment.
I'm glad you picked up on that. I was so torn on whether or not I wanted to bring that up before you started watching. I was like, do I want to tell him to listen to the music, or do I want him to just get his natural reactions? So it's not something that I inherently noticed any of the times that I watched it. However, once I did notice it, it was hard not to forget. It's very distracting. However, I went back and I rewatched that scene with the original composition, and a lot of people were saying that they hate the director's cut for changing the music. I think James Horner's version is worse.
Now I want to go and look up the clip of the theatrical version of the fight
I'll
just
send you
to,
one. It's
yeah.
really funny. So
I'm already laughing a shit ton at this movie. So
it's not horrible for the amount of time that he was given to compose the soundtrack. It's not bad. However, I think the new track that Peterson chose was way more dynamic in terms of its sound, because the James Horner stuff is just this really low like percussion beat that's playing the entire time. It really doesn't match the vibe of the fight. And I remember when I was re-listening to it, I watched them back to back. I was like, this feels kind of lame and half-assed. And I get that that probably wasn't the intention, but it really does feel like he was just like, oh, I need to score this fight, but I don't have time to like make a an actual theme for it. So I'm just gonna have tap on some drums, throw in some fucking gladiator vocalizations, and we'll call it a day. That's what it feels like to me. And so I at least respect the decision that Peterson made to take that out and put a more vibrant and dynamic track over the fight scene. That being said, you can clearly tell the track was not made for the movie. It sounds way different from anything that Yared and Horner composed. And on top of that, you can really tell that the sound design was not mixed with the intention for that track to be played over it.
nope.
So neither of them are perfect. I did listen to some of the track that was titled Hector versus Achilles or whatever, or the Hector fight from the rejected score. It sounds better. I would have liked to see more of his stuff used in the movie. Obviously, probably would have cost more for them to have either Yard or Horner come back and tweak a lot of their compositions. But I do think that both him and Horner should have at least deserved the respect of being asked, do you want to come back and refine the score that you made for my movie? So, sorry, that was my tangent about the music. I've been dying to talk about it with you because I was so curious if you noticed it or not.
It is funny how like I noticed it, but like there's like something about it that I wasn't able to like. It just felt weird watching throughout the entire movie, and the whole time I just couldn't pick up on the sense why. It felt like things were not placed in the right areas. Like the rises in a lot of the songs came in at really random points.
Yeah.
And a lot of the music didn't happen like in individual fights or something. And when they did, like what I was just saying before, they just kind of randomly pop in. Not when like a character's down on his knees and you know that he's about to die, but it comes in after to like the father reacting or something like that. Like even when Achilles dies at the end, the music, like I didn't even notice it. you know, and I guess like I'm not saying that as a problem, but more as a
I mean, it's distracting.
it's very distracting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good word to put.
I I think if you want better timing for the musical composition and the cues and everything, the theatrical is better in that sense. I personally don't think the Horner score was kind of worth it. It definitely is pulling a lot. Maybe it's definitely pulling too much from Gladiator, is my thing. Like, I know Horner can compose really beautiful music. Braveheart is a really good example. It definitely feels like he wasn't given a lot of creative freedom, and that they were trying to mimic something that they knew, like, oh, Gladiator was good, make music like that.
I guess the one thing I'll really give this movie is they do a really good job at putting you as the viewer in the middle of this big epic Trojan War. And I'm not talking about like from the acting standpoint and whatnot, but like the production design's really good.
Oh yeah,
The way they shoot
this movie.
Troy, like even though I think the editing is kind of wonky, I think a lot of the shots are really good, and the way they use the camera to represent these really big armies, and like it's hard. I'm trying not to compare it to like modern day stuff because what this came out in like 2000,
2004.
2001. Okay, early 2000, 2004, like you were saying. I think they do a really good job with what I'm sure they had on hand. And that's for me what did keep me invested enough to just want to keep watching, is because I was so engulfed in this world that they've put us into, even though I don't think it's as interesting without the gods as it would be with the
Yeah,
gods.
definitely. And I think just focusing on a specific point in the story, like obviously a lot of this deals with the stuff from the Iliad. That's the most well known part of the Trojan War. I think focusing on that probably would have been better, because they do set up Achilles as the main character. That being said, I like seeing more of like the backstory stuff with Hector and Paris's relationship. I don't know 100% how much that factors into the Iliad, but I don't know. It's just that, and that also, again, obviously they cut out a lot of stuff. Like, there's stuff between Paris and Hector that is not present in the movie because either they didn't have time or they were like, this has too much Greek shit in it, we can't put that in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like you said, the costumes, the set design, all really good. They built, parts
You
of
could
the
tell.
Trojan Wall. They built parts of the Trojan City. A lot of it was shot on location where they, actually physically built all this stuff. It wasn't a back lot. It wasn't a green screen. There are obviously visual effects in terms of extending, some of the armies, or extending some of the backgrounds and stuff.
But
But
like,
I
dude,
thought it all looks really good. And something that I found really interesting when I was looking at old reviews for the movie was that a lot of the negative reviews, at least I didn't read the full articles, but I saw a lot of like the blurbs on Metacritic, focused on how bad the CGI looked. Like, they really didn't
I
like the
didn't notice
CGI.
it.
I didn't either. Dude, I'm watching this on a 2007 DVD and it looks amazing. Like, you can kind of tell if you look for it, but I don't know. I was looking at like the big shot where it reveals the ship sailing towards Troy. That's a great shot. It all looks great. I don't know what these people were on, and believe me, we know what bad CGI looks like. We've been complaining about it for the last 10 to 20 years. This is fine, all right? There's nothing that I felt was distracting, and so I really don't understand why a lot of people were singling out the CGI.
I thought it was a good effect when Achilles like chopped the dude's head off.
Oh, yeah.
When he found Briseis at the end of the movie. Briseis, Jesus Christ.
Also, the movie was nominated for an Academy Award for the costumes.
I mean, it makes sense. Like I said, I think the production design, the costuming, everything that goes into that aspect's really good. Like, especially when they first started invading Troy after getting out of the Trojan horse, when they're lighting the entire place on fire, I'm like, damn, bro, this looks really good. Like, like them actually burning everything down, being in the fire, like it all feels very visceral in those moments. Which
No,
is
yeah.
what I
So,
like.
and that was another thing that a lot of people complained about the theatrical cut, was that the the stuff where they actually sack the city of Troy is like barely in the movie. And
Wow,
so when they
really?
went to,
That's one of the better parts.
when they went to go redo the edit, they included a lot more of the, you know, the stuff of them killing the citizens, and there is unfortunately some stuff with them assaulting women, but unfortunately
Okay.
that is something that would happen if the city was sacked. So it's kind of like, you know,
I could not stop laughing at them throwing the fake babies off the set, bro. It was so jarringly just like right there that I'm like, dude, this is so fucking funny.
hold
'Cause-
on. I'm so
yeah.
glad you mentioned that because I did want to ask you if you noticed them reuse that moment twice,
Yeah,
because
bro.
they show it the first time from like a head-on angle, and then like 5 minutes later they
From
show it
like the
again
back.
from like a side profile, and you can
Yeah.
clearly tell it's the same scene, it's the same actors, and I that did
And
take
it's
me
just
out.
like this cloth that he's holding with nothing in it that you see him throw over it.
I did think that was funny. They probably shouldn't have done that. I'm just like, you couldn't find a different shot
Well,
to use.
that goes back to like my whole argument about that type of stuff just throwing me out of like these really big
Intense.
and immersive scenes. Like
Yeah.
like that's why I was kind of hesitant and being like, yeah, bro, when you were mentioning like people complaining about like the way the women were abused in these moments, is like those are really horrific scenes, and then that same moment they throw this really fake baby from multiple different angles and multiple different shots from the same guy with like this really, they use the same baby crying effect too.
Oh
The
yeah.
noise for it, like wah!
It's just so funny because it happens in such quick succession. Like it's fine in the moment where you see it the first time, but then it happens again, and you kind of just sit like back and be like, didn't we just see someone do that? And then you start thinking about it, like, she's wearing the same costume. That's the same baby sound. Like they reused that. They just used a different angle of the same fucking thing. It's literally the same take.
Dude, it's so funny.
And it's so hilarious. Like, really? Like, that's what you decided to put back in? That's kind of weird. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I think the movie is fine. It's not great. I think it has enough going for it in terms of, like, some dramatic choices. Most of the actors are doing a good job, if not decent. Obviously, you know, a lot of the big draw is, like, you know, Achilles, Brad Pitt, you know, the nudity. A lot of people really liked the extended nudity in the movie when the director's cut came out. So take that with what you will. But I think the action is pretty good for the most part. It's got spectacle. So, you know, I really enjoy this movie. I'm a sucker for Greek myths. I don't think we have enough movies about Greek myths. I've been trying to watch some of the older ones, like Jason and the Argonauts is on my list. I still haven't seen the original Clash of the Titans, but I do really enjoy the 2010s versions.
Ha! There's something I've seen with Greek mythology that you haven't, asshole.
I grew up watching the Disney Hercules, which is also
Everyone did.
really it's a bastardization of the original Greek myths, but it's a
Dude,
fun movie.
Just wait till the live action eventually comes out. Like, you think it's bad then? It's gonna
That's
be
another.
worse.
Have you seen the Dwayne Johnson Hercules?
Sadly, it was.
I
Not
liked
good.
that movie when it came out. I thought it was all right.
I did not
but,
think it was
you know,
very good.
It is what it is. I think definitely a lot of like more modern movies kind of like a lot of those movies were mainly like British productions, and you can definitely tell that they're treating it more like, you know, either an opera or a play. And
Yeah.
so I think it's hard for them to put that into the perspective of like a modern audience. But I think this definitely has a lot of like nostalgic value in terms of the type of movie, because they don't make movies like this anymore. And the Odyssey is probably the closest thing we're ever going to get to this kind of movie where it's like, you know, on location, mostly practical.
You've never seen Napoleon. Dude, stop.
Does Napoleon count though? Because like
That was
Ridley
the only
Scott,
good thing about that movie, bro.
Ridley Scott doesn't make movies the way he used to either. Like Gladiator
No,
2 was not
Gladiator
great.
2 was awful, bro.
Like
it was not good.
that movie was kind of whatever, and it has a lot of the same flaws as most modern movies, even though he'll tell you he doesn't. So, but you know, he's made good movies. I really like Gladiator. I really like Kingdom of Heaven, the director's cut. It is what it is. I miss movies like this. which is why I still like it. And it's low hanging fruit, okay? Because I really do like Greek myths, and I was the only one in my entire high school that read the Odyssey cover to cover.
Yeah, real fucking nerd over here.
Bro, fuck you. Anyways,
you want to get into a wrap up?
yeah. So you go first. I'm so interested to hear how you rated this. Probably give it a 1.
No, I gave it a 2 out of 5.
Interesting.
I think watching the director's cut probably leaned me to have a better experience while watching this, because I don't think I fall on the lines as like everyone who just like vehemently hates this movie, because like I see people bash this movie left and right, and I think I would have felt
praising it.
Maybe nowadays because it's been so long, but I think the overall consensus is it's really bad. But also, I think they might be talking more about the theatrical, which I just want to watch to see how different it is now.
It's interesting.
I definitely think I would have been in that boat if I'd watched the theatrical over the director's cut. But I think the thing that helps is a lot of my issues early on, at least with the acting and character dynamics, eventually gets better halfway through. And at least that's what I could hope for a movie when it starts out the way that this movie does. And so by the end, I did enjoy Brad Pitt. I did like all the actors, but like, yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it for what it was, but also I acknowledge a lot of it was unintentionally funny, which for me makes me not want to watch it again, but I think it would make it a much more an easier watch than I think a lot of people would say it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I agree with what you were saying where it gets a little boring here and there, but some of the lines and acting choices are just so out there sometimes in those scenes that you're just like, wait, did I just hear that correctly? Like, why am I watching a scene where someone's talking to Brad Pitt and he's not even looking at them for 10 minutes and he's looking at the fuck ass ocean for some reason?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious what. I think this director's cut shines in the fact that it is an extra 30 minutes longer. You might not notice as much of it on, a rewatch if you've seen the theatrical or if you're going back and revisiting the theatrical, because a lot of it is kind of little things. Like they're using either alternate angles or they're extending bits and moments. So, there's things that aren't present in it, like the moment between Agamemnon and the King of Thessaly at the very beginning, the opening scene, is cut to shreds, man. Like, it's so incredibly jarring that when I went and rewatched it, I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Like, they say one or two lines to each other, and then they introduce Achilles, which is not how it is in the director's cut. They have, like, an exchange with each other, which is how normal people would talk. And it also helps set up sort of the pride and ego of Agamemnon that I don't think you really get a good sense of in the theatrical version.
Yeah. I think this is one of the cases where the director's cut is actually a director's cut that has meaning and true value to it, because a lot of them nowadays just add like 2 minutes worth of extra stuff and it doesn't like make a scene longer. It's like 5 to 10 second cuts of like an action scene. It's those type of things where I think this is one of those things where if you're going to watch it, watch the director's cut. Yeah, it's 30 to 40 minutes longer, but I feel like you're going to get a lot more out of it than you would if you watch the theatrical.
Yeah, there's way more character stuff in this that I think they cut too much out of. It definitely doesn't need to be that long. I think there's a good version of this somewhere out there. Maybe trying to find alternate takes of some of the stuff, because there's some kind of shoddy stuff. Like, some of the it would be interesting to see some of the alternate takes of this. Just trying to find little bits and pieces to pull from. Be like, okay, this wasn't working in this scene. Maybe we can try and supplement that with some other stuff. But I still like the movie. I'm 100% going to purchase the Arrow Video re-release of it in 4K. If you are interested in the movie, definitely watch the director's cut. There are cheaper alternatives. There's a Blu-ray version of it out there.
What'd you give it though, score-wise?
I give it a 3.5.
Damn, bro.
I think this movie's
All
entertaining.
right.
I think there's enough for me. I think objectively it's probably closer to a 3. 3 for me is like solid.
I was expecting you to say 3, by the
But
way.
I
I would
think
have accepted it.
I would get way more out of this experience than I know most people do, and obviously you. But yeah.
But hey, I think I was a lot easier on this film than I think you might have been expecting.
Not really.
I felt like I was going to come in a lot harder on this movie than I came out.
I don't know. I think I've spent most of this conversation kind of disagreeing with you and like trying to defend the movie. Not in a bad way.
I don't agree with that. I feel like you agreed with me, but gave me the pre-context of the poem and the other version of the film that I didn't have.
That's fair. I didn't expect to have to do a lot of that as much as I thought I was going to. I thought you were at least familiar with like the general idea of the Iliad and like the Trojan War. But you know,
Sorry,
I definitely
I'm a fucking bum.
I definitely made that mistake of expecting that from you, but
Sorry, I don't reach your expectations, bro.
my thing is that I kind of didn't want to bring the poem into it because I don't think you have to be familiar with the poem because I've never read the full poem. I have a copy of it. I've read bits and pieces. I'm more familiar with like, you know, the stuff that's in this book that I was telling you about. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think you need to have read the book to kind of find some enjoyment out of it. And so I wasn't intending to bring up the poem as much as we did because while there are instances where you can tell that they're struggling with trying to translate some of that stuff, it's not the worst thing about the movie.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think I found more enjoyment in it than I wasn't expecting, and like I don't think it's like this huge piece of trash that I feel like a lot of people have been like trying to put onto it for like all of my life because that's all I've ever heard about the movie. But
I think it's definitely overhated from a
I
critical
agree.
reception standpoint. Like obviously audiences were there. It made money. It cost more to make than they were anticipating, but you know,
Feels
there
like
was
a lot
stuff,
of movies
there,
nowadays.
well, no, there was a lot of stuff at the time. It was one of the most expensive movies, which was like about $200 million. Obviously, that's not really expensive to us now. However,
Marvel.
it came out around a time where people were kind of looking back more on historical epics and kind of taking them for more than they were.
Agreed.
And you know, there's a lot of talk about like, oh, this isn't correct. This isn't how the story plays out. My thing is, it's the same thing with the fucking Odyssey. Like, you know, when the trailer came out and everyone was dogging on it, like, oh, that looks like shit. That they wouldn't have dressed this way. They wouldn't have talked that way. It's just like nobody fucking cares. Okay, you know, it's
Those people who have those replies are the people that have never like are kind of like me. Like I don't say that, but are in the same boat as me where they've never read any of it and don't understand a lot of what the story is or like how people know about it.
it's supposed to be weird. It's not supposed to be accurate. You know, people agree that this shit probably didn't happen. They agree that Achilles probably wasn't a real person. Some people even still debate whether or not Troy was a real fucking city. And it's just like, you know, or I don't understand that. You know, there'll be people who'll be like, oh, Diane Kruger wasn't hot enough to play Helen of Troy.
Who cares?
It's same thing
You
with
know what I
same
mean?
thing with the Odyssey. Like Lupita Nyong'o is not hot enough to play. I mean that has a more of a race thing going with it, but it's still dumb. You're all fucking dumb. You're blind. You need to get your eyes checked. I don't understand that stuff. I saw something recently. I don't know if I sent it to you, but it was an actual like, you know, classicist or scholar talking about those arguments and saying the exact same thing.
How stupid
Like,
they are.
it's stupid. These are not real. They're meant to be. They're not meant to really be taken at face value. Even at the time that some of this stuff was written, like when Homer. And also, Homer's not a real person either, okay? It's just a name we gave the author because we don't know who actually wrote it. I don't even think we even know if Homer, the same person, wrote the Odyssey.
The only Homer I know is named Simpson
Okay.
after it.
It's just, you know, there's so much uncertainty, and at the time when even the earliest shapings of the Iliad and the Odyssey, which weren't even written, they weren't intended to be written. They were oral traditions. You would tell the story verbally. So things have changed over the course of time. You know, the original iteration of the story was probably very different. Probably didn't include a lot of things that we know to be like, oh, this is how the story is supposed to be told.
Yeah.
It's meant to be interpreted. It's the version of the story that people are familiar with is not even the original version of the Homer poem, because it was translated from Greek. So it's stupid shit like that kind of gets on my nerves. So that's another reason why I can put past some of the stuff like, yeah, this isn't the way that the original story is. I don't care. I want to sit down and I want to watch a fucking good movie, or a fun one at least. I thought this movie was entertaining. Sorry, that was a long tangent. We're done.
No, I'm just glad I agree. I don't have that baggage that like you carry with you.
No, yeah, and I don't know. It's just people walk into movies ready to hate them now. Like you and me talking about this with like the Supergirl stuff as well. Sorry, my dog is barking. She agrees with me. She's angry at the critics as well. Like y'all need to shut the fuck up. I'm so sick of this shit. Like go watch the movie and don't expect it to. Like there are some times where you can expect a movie to be bad, but there's just times where it's just like, Elliot Page shouldn't be Achilles or stupid shit like that. I'm like, nobody cares. Nobody fucking cares. Go fuck yourselves. Anyways.
Yeah. All right. So
let's.
Yeah. No. I'll lead us into Leo. What are we watching next week, man?
All right. Next week Jesus Christ, I'm really barking up there. Next week we are. God, that really took it out of me, that last bit.
It took all the wind out of your fucking lungs.
It kind of did. And next week we're talking about Evil Dead Burn, which is coming out on, what is it?
The 13th? 10th?
No. Jesus fucking Christ.
I'm pretty sure it comes out July 10th, man.
Yes, I think you're right. It comes out July 10th, yes. So we will be talking about that. We're going to go see it. Obviously, you guys know we did a whole episode, a really long one actually, on the entire Evil Dead franchise. So we've been looking forward to this. I'm super excited. There's been some new news about Evil Dead Wrath, the movie coming out after that. Maybe we'll talk about that next episode as well. So stay tuned for that. If you're not familiar with the channel, we've got a lot of stuff out. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Music, as well as YouTube Music. But yeah, so go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, comment. Have you seen Troy? Do you like the movie? What things do you dislike or like about it? Have you seen the theatrical version? Which version do you prefer? But yeah, so
we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace, bitches.